Yo, Zenith Nation, welcome back to Catch The Zenith, the podcast where I document my journey to get better in life and business. Today we've got another episode of Zenith Reflections, where I comment on some of my most interesting posts from the week on X, formerly known as Twitter. And by the way, if you're new here to this podcast, I'm Nicola, an entrepreneur and master student, so please share and enjoy. The first post is actually a repost coming from a guy called Always Keep Learning. Quite an interesting handle or profile. And he talks about 12 signs of a high potential employee. In other words, 12 traits of high achiever employees. And the first one is they act on feedback immediately. So they are pretty coachable. That would be the trait. And I think two definitions are here really, very helpful. The first one is learning. I like the definition coming from Alex Ramosi. Learning is if you get a new piece of information, you change your behavior. That's what's learning. So if you learn about to say X, Y, Z in this situation, the next time this situation appears, you say that, what you've learned. That's learning. And then intelligence on the other side is defined as the rate of learning. So how fast can you change your behavior? So give you an example. Imagine someone is showing you a red card and then slaps you. That's what's happening. The second time this person shows you this red card and wants to slap you, you duck. So what happened is same situation, but new behavior. So you change your behavior. And you did that very, very fast, so you have a high level of intelligence. And now circling back on the first sign or trait, they act on feedback immediately. If an employee does that, they are pretty coachable. And if they are pretty coachable, that's already a great thing. But I would say even more important, it's then to change your behavior fast. Like if you get coached by your boss, your supervisor, and just one time he's telling you should do X, and the next time in the same situation you do X, you have learned and you have a pretty high level of intelligence. So be coachable and learn fast. That's the main takeaway here. The second one is humbleness. They are deeply humble. So for instance, when someone else did more than you or did the heavy lift and you just contributed with a little thing, but you are standing in the center because somehow you are the person communicating it, then don't put yourself in the center of everything. Say those folks did the heavy lift. I was just enjoying more or less the end result. I was supporting a little bit. So being humble, that's another one. And showing that other people, if it's true, have contributed a lot and not saying that's my work. The third one is they don't need to be told what to do. In other words, they are go-getters. That's a trait you want. They are, if you just can give them a goal, that's a project, you should achieve this. How they attain that goal is up to them. So they are capable and pretty creative and resourcefulness when it comes to figure out how do I attain that goal. And I had similar situations in my past two internships, for instance, where I just had this is what's the end goal. This is what we want from you. In my first internship, I had the task of creating the social media strategy for that company, which was quite a large task. But since I had previous experience with a marketing agency, I already knew how to approach it more or less. But I figured then out how to do it. I started with a template, which I found on HubSpot. And I started to create this strategy. I wrote down who is our target group, and those are our competitors, and so on. And I figured out a way how to attain that goal, but it was my own resourcefulness that helped me to do that. And I think that's an important part, that you're capable of coming up with creative solutions to a big problem you need to solve or a challenge you need to master. The fourth one is they take ownership without being asked. So high agency would be the trait. So they are capable of saying hey, I did a mistake here, but here's the solution. And that's, I think, exactly what a high achiever employee is doing, not only coming up or coming to the boss with problems and things they did wrong, but also with the solution or some solution options at hand. They can present and say, look, that's what I've done wrong. This is how we're going to fix it. Next one, fifth, is they over-communicate their progress. Also an important one. And a quick story here. I remember when I getting into a master's program at the University of St. Gallen called Master in General Management. And we had like an opening ceremony. It was like a two-day experience. We were like in a hotel. There were some larger rooms where some people gave some speeches, and there was one woman from Boston Consulting Group, and I'm hugely paraphrasing now, but what I remember is she said something like, always make sure when working a project that your contribution is visible so that people know what you have done. And I found that a really interesting learning, because sometimes you work your ass off, you do quite a lot of work, but people don't know it. And I think that's part of the game, letting people know that what you have accomplished, what you did, that they are aware of it. And I'm not saying you should do less work and more over communicating like crazy. I'm not saying that. But a small amount of time spending on, hey, this is what I've done. You can obviously you can tell them that in a meeting, or you can communicate it over Slack, etc. Or like what I've done in a past internship in the US, whenever I had a weekly meeting with the chief operating officer on Friday night usually. And I always prepared like a quick PowerPoint presentation where I showed those are the 5, 6, 7 projects I'm currently working on, and that's exactly the progress I've made in this given week. So he saw full disclosure, full transparency, what I've accomplished. And so I communicated my progress. And I think supervisors, if we are optimizing for maximum performance as an employee, that's, I think, a great way to do, because supervisors really like seeing like, oh, that's what you've done. I know exactly what my employees are doing. So, long story short, over communication. That's the trait. Then the sixth sign of a high potential employee or high performer employee is they leave you with energy. If you spend time with them, you get inspired. You are pumped up. And there are some folks out there that always when I spend time with them, like I feel better. Like for instance, with my mentor, Sylvan, whenever I talk to him, I feel like really inspired by his ambition, by his smartness. And I think that's exactly the people you want to have around you. And again, if we are optimizing for maximum performance. Then the next one, seventh trait, is they build relationships before they need them. So they're like people, like loving people, let's put it like that. And so capable of building up meaningful relationships. I would argue whether it's one option is doing, or one part of it is building up relationship with your colleagues, with your vendors, with the customers, because that will help you long-term wise. And you want to act as a high integrity person. And I think in the long run, that's exactly what you want. You want to spend time with long-term people on long-term projects. That's ideally, I think. And that's something, quite frankly, if I think back in my second internship, for instance, I worked my ass off because I had the internship and I was running a coaching business. So I was working 5 to 7 in the morning, lunch breaks, evening. I was working on my business. And then on top of that, the internship. So quite a bunch of things going on. And I had, for instance, like a company event that's happening once a year. And although I really would love, to a certain degree, to attend that, or at least like, I think would have been a cool experience, I didn't go there because I had one goal in front of me. That was like over-delivering my clients and running my business, basically. And at that point, I was optimizing for that, which was not ideally from a standpoint if I had optimized for maximum performance at work. Although I did perform pretty well, according to my supervisor, I did quite a bunch of work. He said he never saw such a focused person like me, so that was basically what he said. But I didn't optimize for building a lot of meaningful work relationships, like outside of work, let's put it like that. And that's something if going forward, that's something the next time if I'm working 100% in the job and not having a business, I want to 100% dedicate everything towards that to be the best possible employee. And again, that was a different situation before. I had a business, running a business, and obviously I knew I could also do the opposite thing. I could only optimize for the internship, but it was an active decision. So it was not something I wasn't aware of. But I think, long story short, if we are optimizing for an employee that wants to max everything out, then building up meaningful relationship is obviously part of the game. The next one is they own their learning. So they are constantly learning and trying to improve themselves. Like in sales, a great example would be like you do role plays, you do feedback sessions, you review the pipeline, you identify areas what you can do better, you listen to sales calls, and you're constantly improving, trying to learn. And maybe also outside of work, you read books, you listen to podcasts, you try to be, again, you try to be the best possible employee when it comes to learning as well. You never stand still. So the trade is here, I would say, learning. 10 or 9, actually, they make others look good. That's another really valuable trait. Like, I'll give you an example. I hosted last week an event at Swisspreneur. For those of you who don't know Swisspreneur, this is a Swiss non-profit organization with the goal or the mission to advance and develop entrepreneurship in Switzerland. And we have 3 branches there. We have a content branch with some podcasts and masterclasses. We have a community branch with events and our Slack community of a lot of founders. And then we have the syndicate where we do early stage startup investments. And I'm normally I'm doing the investor relations in the syndicate, so the investment branch of Swisspreneur. But a colleague of mine, she couldn't host the event, which was scheduled last week on Thursday, which was a founders dinner with roughly 40 people. And she asked me, hey, the supervisor asked me, hey, or the head of department of the events asked me if I could step in and do the hosting in person there. I said, yes, let's do that. But the cool thing was, or the heavy lift, like the organization, sending out the emails, everything else, or the reservation at the restaurant, everything was already done. So I was just there handing out name tags and making sure that the evening is running smoothly, that the rotation of tables works, because it was like a rotating dinner after each course. We changed the tables. So it was a pretty, for me, it was not a heavy lift anymore. The heavy lift the events team has already done. And then later in the Slack community, my friends expressed their gratitude that I stepped in, and that was really nice for me to read that. But I then also said in my message, look, hey, you already did the heavy lift. It was actually like the meaning of that was you already have done the work. I was just there hosting and enjoying the easy stuff there, the easy work. So I think that's an important part of it, to make others look good. That's an important trait, if it's true, obviously. And by the way, it was a great experience to host that event. Learned a lot, good, cool opportunity, and actually grateful that I could do that, yeah. Then trait number 10, or sign number 10 of high potential employees is they always look for win-wins. So I've read the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and one of those habits is look for win-win situations, that both of you are better off, as opposed to if you don't do a deal together. So, and I think that's also connected or associated with this quote, something like Naval Ravikant said, you wanted to do play long-term games with long-term people. Like you want, and I'll give you a specific example. If you go to eat lunch and you pay for lunch and the other person gives you then later on the money for it, this person gives you maybe a little bit more. So you want to make deals or play games with people that are highly reliable and they already do more than they promised for you. And you don't need to worry if they you don't really need to worry about anything. They are just great partners. And there are not a lot of people out there that are doing that, but I know some of them. Like one of the people that comes to my mind is my mentor, Sylvan Krembühl. Um, he's a very inspiring person. Whenever I spend time with him, like we have some mentoring session, I'm very energized after those calls, very inspired, and very inspired by his ambition as well. And one thing is really like he's super super reliable. Like I give you a specific example when once we had a dinner with the entire Swisspreneur team, and in the end we want to give tips, and he asked me, hey, do you have like cash? And I gave him cash, and because he was paying it, because he's managing the finance aspect of Swisspreneur, and I gave him that, and without asking even, he did a bank transfer after the dinner without even, like, I didn't need to ask him. It was already done. He gave me the money back immediately, and I think even a little bit more, I don't know, but he gave me, and that's exactly what you want. And he's in general very generous, and I think that's exactly what we want in partners or the people we spend a lot of time with. Like, we are looking for win-win situations, and we are highly reliable, and we are better off together, and we play long-term games with long-term people. So they always look for win-win situations. That's number 10. Number 11 is they treat everyone with respect. It's pretty simple. So respectfulness. That's actually one of my values. Like, it doesn't matter how like bad you feel, if you have didn't have a good night's sleep, you can always remain respectful. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I think decency and respectfulness is something nice, because sometimes I see people like they think just because they had a bad night's sleep they can be disrespectful to other people. But I think that's not the right approach, and I'm saying that as someone who also sometimes was maybe not the most respectful person to other people when I was in bad mood. But I think in a lot of cases I did a good job, and therefore I see that as one of my core values. Then the last one, they get things done every day. So they are, again, go-getters. If you tell them, hey, do this small task, it's already done pretty quickly. And it's interesting. There are different types of people. What I've identified two patterns. There are folks that always say, I have so much to do, but like you need always to wait to complete something. And then there are other people that have even more to do, but interestingly, they get it done so quickly, maybe even at the end of the day. And that's interesting. There are definitely some procrastinator and people who don't procrastinate, who get it done right away. I'm not judging, that's just an observation, but I think like if you get everyday things done and you get them done fast, that's again something that companies very very much like, and like that you can be a very productive individual. And in my case, for instance, at Swisspreneur, that's my volunteering activity. I try to be a highly responsive person when it comes to Slack messages or emails. So I try to answer pretty fast. I don't want to procrastinate. And I think people really like that. Like, it's like in customer service. If a customer has a question and he gets an answer after 60 seconds, that's super fast. And they really like that. And also in sales, like imagine you want to buy a product, let's say a B2B software product, and you text the customers, the sales team, like, I'm interested, and you get a message back within 60 seconds, or they call you immediately. You think like, wow, if their sales department works so efficiently, I'm sure their product will be top notch. And I think that also applies obviously to employees. They are answering really quickly. They are not procrastinating. So long story short, those were 12 traits or signs of a high potential employee. I found pretty helpful. And I give you 2 bonus strategies that served me pretty well over the past 2 internships, but also at my current activity at Swisspreneur and beyond. That is, first one is, whenever you have a project and a due date associated with that project, let's say, hey, on Friday, I need to deliver this PowerPoint presentation. What you always do is you deliver one day earlier than like 1 day earlier. And the second thing what you do is you deliver earlier and an extra thing, a little bonus, like I'm doing here, a little bonus. And with bonus, I mean you do maybe a little bit more research into another project, or you say, look, hey, that was my task, but hey, I also did this here because I thought it's important to this project or for this project. And they really love that. And I give you a specific example how I did that. I worked at Stadler Rail in America, in Salt Lake City. It was like a Swiss train manufacturer. And I had the opportunity to do this internship 6 months because a friend of mine from university, fellow student, already did this internship, and he connected me then with the executive, with the COO. Long story short, one of my first projects, or actually the first project, was I needed to do like analysis of potential locations to open a new facility for one of the divisions they had, or I think departments. I'm not entirely sure anymore. And I did that. Did a pretty good job there, I would say. Spent a lot of time on the PowerPoint presentation, researching everything. And then also, in addition to that, I provided them with some extra research, I think. Or no, I recorded for them a Loom video, a screen recording video. I think that was my bonus, something like that. And I delivered also a day earlier. And everything together, delivering earlier and this bonus thing, my supervisor at that point, or the project lead, was pretty satisfied with that. And it was not very difficult in the end. It was just 1 day earlier and a little bit more than promised. That's all. But it can make a big difference. That's bonus number 1. Second bonus, and again, we are optimizing here for maximum, let's say, achievement as an employee, is you arrive 30 minutes early at work and you go home 30 minutes later. So you work 60 minutes more in total. Why? Why should we do that? If we want to have a raise in salary or get a promotion, perhaps, think about this. If you have two employees, one employee is always there exactly at 8 a.m. when this person should start work. And the other person is always 30 minutes earlier there. Again, person A is then leaving exactly at, let's say, 5 p.m. in the evening, but the other person stays 30 minutes later. Who will get the promotion? Who will get the increase in salary? I think it's quite obvious. And obviously, it depends. And there are some nuance and details and complex situations, but it's fair to say that I like that as a boss, if someone's doing more, and especially if it's good quality work. So those two principles, like 30 minutes earlier, 30 minutes later, and delivering earlier and a little bit more than promised. Those two principles served me very, very well over my past 2 internships. Particularly, I would say the second. But also, quite frankly, in business, when I try to over-deliver to my clients, or also now at my work at Swisspreneur, it serves me everywhere pretty well, I would say. Doing more, doing better work, that helps. All right, long story short, next post. That was a long one, but I thought it's valuable. The next one is a quote by Chris Williamson. He said, "We spend most of our lives learning firsthand the warnings that previous generations gave us over and over again." This quote comes from his recent conversation together with Joe Rogan on the Joe Rogan podcast. And he then also shared some examples for those lessons that previous generations already learned and warns us about that over and over again. The first example was, money won't make you happy. Quite an obvious one. But we need to people need to tell us that over and over again, in some cases, not in all, but or we need to learn it ourselves. The second example is, fame isn't going to fix your self-worth. Also quite an obvious one, but we need to hear it over and over again. And then the third one is, you don't love that pretty girl. She's just hot and difficult to get. Example 4 he mentioned was, you will regret working too much. Or example 5, worrying isn't aiding your performance. Example 6, nothing is as important as you think it is when you're thinking about it. Example 7, you should see your parents more. 8, all your worries are a waste of time. And lastly, number 9, it's perfectly okay to cut toxic people out of your life. So there are pretty obvious examples, but I just liked how bluntly he put it. Like, they're so obvious and we know them, but it's sometimes, not sometimes, I would say almost always really important to learn about the basics, the things that are so obvious but we forget because of mundane everyday things, you know. So I really like that one, and I can recommend listening to this podcast on Joe Rogan with Chris Williamson. He's a pretty smart guy. Then another quote exactly from this conversation was, "You're stuck in a third world prison and you get one phone call to ring somebody to get you out of this prison. Who would you ring?" I love that question because I think it's a great way to identify who the highest agency person is in your life. The person, the most reliable, responsible, go-getter person in your life. By asking this question, like, I'm in this shit prison here. I have one phone call to get out here. Who would I ring? Who would we ring? Think about it. All right, next one. This is again a repost. A little bit a longer one, I think, but I think it's worth discussing. So the person, it's a post from Clint Jarvis about Col Newport and his ideas in terms of why we should be careful how we use our phones nowadays. So Col Newport, for those of you who don't know, he's the author of the book Deep Work, Digital Minimalism, Slow Productivity, and many more. He has also a podcast called, I think, Deep Questions. And one thing he's very good at is living a pretty focused life. Especially, and he don't have any social media channels, which is also quite interesting. And he deleted almost every app from his phone. And he wrote 4 bestsellers in 9 years, which is pretty impressive. And his controversial take, and I'm now referring to this post I'm going through, his controversial take is your phone is making you mediocre. And here is a science-backed system for getting your brain back. And let me go step by step through this post. So an interesting thing this post discusses then, the average person spends a whooping 4 hours and 30 minutes on their phone daily. And that figure is still growing. That's nearly 50 days per year staring at a small screen. And a study from the Journal of the Association for Consumer Research revealed something crucial. The average person spends 4 hours and 37 minutes on their phone each day. It's actually even more. Interesting. Okay, 4 hours, 37 minutes. Quite a lot. Yeah, quite impressive. 50 days per year. And the mere presence of your phone reduces cognitive capacity. And I'm now reading from this post. Even when it's turned off. Face down on your desk. Your brain is actively working to resist picking it up. This brain drain effect leaves fewer resources for actual thinking. And it's kind of interesting. This constant context switch is so mentally draining and mentally demanding, or cognitive demanding, and it makes us tired, or at least it makes me tired. And I recently had, because I consider myself as someone who's really capable of like distinguishing throughout the day between deep work sessions, so focused work sessions, and shallow work sessions, so sessions where I answer emails, Slacks, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, and so on. But when I mix that up, what happened sometimes in the past, I feel so tired. However, if I'm really consequent and I resist the urge to check my phone or to check Slack or to check emails, I'm way better off. I feel way better. And I'm really capable of focusing for a very long period, for a very extended period of time, without getting very, very tired. That's part of the reason why many days I worked 12 hours. I had entire semesters, like Monday to Saturday, like Monday to Friday, always 12 hours with like, I was just sitting all day. My lunch breaks was still work. And on Saturdays, I worked a little bit less, like 8-9 hours. And that was only possible because I really conditioned myself of you do one thing at a time and you do it very intensely, or you attempt to do it as intensely as possible. And however, conversely, if we constantly check our notifications, it's so, at least for me, it's really like, it's not a really nice existence. And Cole Newport identified how phones affect our brains. The first one is basically they create powerful dopamine feedback loops. And the second, each notification triggers a craving for more interaction. And studies show this mirrors the reward system that drives addiction. Quite interesting, especially the second point. Each notification triggers a craving for more interaction. It's like you get this one notification and you're very, very curious what this person sent you. And then you check it and maybe you get this craving for even more, like when you get another message. It's harder to resist if you get a notification. And that is part of the reason why I personally turned off almost all notifications on my phone. And always when I switch them on, because there is a very, very important message, for instance, coming in on WhatsApp, it's like, it's not a nice existence, as I really quickly try to turn it off again. And there are many situations where I train myself to live a focused life. For instance, at the gym, like I pull up a cool podcast episode. Like last week, I listened, for instance, Leila Hormozi podcast episode on the iced coffee hour podcast, something like that. And I just listened to this podcast episode and I trained. However, in other workouts where I constantly check my phone, like emails coming in or WhatsApps, like this is not a really nice workout. I'm not really training that hard or as hard as I could. And again, that's another example how I train myself. Like I start this podcast episode and now I'm just allowed to train and listen to this podcast episode. And there are other examples where we can test or train or condition our brains to resist the urge. Like waiting in a queue, for instance. Like you're waiting at, I don't know, you want a poke bowl, healthy meal, you wait in a queue and you get a notification and or you don't get a notification, you just are already so used to it that you just pull out your phone and check something, social media, whatever. But in that moment, to be like cautious and thinking about, hey, no, I will just enjoy the moment and be in the moment and enjoy the silence or doing nothing. That's another way how I train myself. There's also research from the UC Irvine discovered it takes 23 minutes and 50 seconds to fully refocus after an interruption. So think about that. Every time you glance at a notification, you lose nearly half an hour of deep focus. This led to Newport's solution, which I will discuss in a minute. But it's incredible. 23 minutes to recover from interruptions. So you do something, you get a text, you get a social, something comes in, you get back to it, you first need to reassess, what did I do, or what have I done, or where did I stop? And sometimes it's quite obvious, but coming in a really deep state of deep thoughts is kind of hard. And I did that so many times that I confidently can tell you, like, takes a little bit. I'm pretty fast at focusing, but like if you're deep into a project and thinking something through, it's kind of hard. And coming there needs a lot of pieces of information that need to be puzzled together, and that's not something that can occur when getting distracted all the time. Now, Newport's solution. He developed digital minimalism. There is also a book entitled Digital Minimalism, which he published. And the core principle is simple. Use technology only in ways that deeply support your values and ruthlessly eliminate everything else. And here's how you can implement it. The digital reset. Set strict limits on non-essential apps. Less social media, less mindless scrolling. Use your phone as a tool, not as an escape. Like, use it as a Swiss Army knife as opposed to an entertaining device for everything. Apps like Root, and there are some apps, and this person is now promoting his apps, this person who posted this, called Roots. I don't know that app. But I want to discuss really this digital minimalism idea. I really like that one. And I implemented that a few years ago. So what I've asked myself is, okay, which are the few apps that make me a very more productive individual? And I identified there are not that many. It's maybe a calendar. I need to know when I'm going to do what. Second, I need a task management system. In my case, it's Things for Apple products. And I need a note-taking system. Yeah? And that's pretty much it. Those are the most important pillars, the foundation of my productivity system. And there are some other smaller apps, but that's the core of it. And everything else is not that relevant. And I deleted quite a bunch of things on my phone and computer that are not making me very productive, that are actually looking like productivity apps, but they are impairing your ability to be productive. And this is something I think we don't want if we want to be productive, obviously. And simply like deleting everything that is not essential helps. And on my phone, for instance, I have a pretty decluttered phone. It's pretty neat. I have the most important apps on my home screen, and then on the second screen I have folders. And I always ask myself, I do sometimes like a quick routine, not really planned, but and like I'm in the airplane and don't know what to do. Maybe I'm reading, but maybe I'm not reading. And then I go through my phone and I think like, oh, this traveling app I really don't need. Or this social media app I really don't need. And then I delete it. And if I really need it, like I can reinstall it. And I ask myself sometimes like, have I really used this app in the past? Maybe in the past 6 to 12 months. And then if the answer is no, I delete it, you know? Another thing that this post discusses is the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology confirmed. Limiting social media reduced loneliness and depression. Focus improved. Sleep quality increased. Anxiety levels decreased significantly. But Newport found something even more fundamental. He emphasized the importance of high-quality leisure. Instead of scrolling, engage in activities that require skill development. These activities provide deeper satisfaction than passive consumption. The neuroscience behind this is compelling. Research shows when you're bored, your brain activates the default mode network. This neural network is crucial for creative thinking and problem solving. It enables deep reflection and novel connections. But constant phone use disrupts this activation. A Newport solution was evidence-based. The University of Texas found having your phone in another room significantly improves cognitive performance. It outperforms all other phone placement strategies. And how you can, I think, one solution is create dedicated tech-free zones in your life. Like you have a zone where that is completely, it's device-free, like, or device-free meals. That's maybe a starting point. So you eat without your phone. Maybe you read a book. Maybe not. Maybe you do nothing. No phone during the morning routine. I personally did that for a pretty long period right now, with very few interruptions of this streak, and tech-free evenings. And this creates what Newport calls solitude, freedom from input from other minds, and research confirms the benefits. The reintroduction phase is also critical. Only bring back technology that serves your core values. Choose tools that provide genuine utility, and study shows this selective approach works best. I think this post is a little bit mixed up, but it doesn't really matter. I think you get the gist. Reducing your phone presence increases cognitive capacity, it improves focus and decision-making ability, and the mind becomes clearer and more creative. Now, all this to say is that looking at our phones, at our devices as Swiss Army knives that improve our lives, it makes us more productive, or smarter. I can learn something on YouTube. I can listen to a podcast. I can quickly ask ChatGPT about whatever challenge I have at hand. I think that's a great way how to look at it. Another takeaway is first getting clear about our core values. In my case, I have 3 core values. That is focus, discipline, and decency. And then based on those values, I define the tools that support those values. That's I think, more sustainable approach. And at least I would say to a certain degree, in my case, this worked out. I didn't do it actively. It was more a passive thing. I would say I figured out without this, maybe I did that implicitly. I think it's really a practical way how to define which tools, which apps, which devices we use in our lives. First, what are my values? And then we think about technology that supports those values that we can live up to them. Not the other way around, and think the other way around most people do. And I did a similar thing in the past, and I think it's not very sustainable. Long story short, so cool post, and if you want to dive deeper into this topic, read Digital Minimalism or Deep Work by Cole Newport. All right. Next one. In your 20s, and this is a personal post which I posted and I wrote, in your 20s, you want to learn, not earn. Scrappy startup over top-notch investment bank. So why I'm telling you that? I listened to a podcast with Robert Greene on the Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett's podcast. And Robert Greene, he's the author of the 48 Laws of Power. He said, whenever you have the possibility to work in a startup where you have a lot of learning opportunities, work there. Don't optimize for salary, especially in your 20s, I think he said. Optimize for learning. And quite frankly, I right now did that. I worked now for the past 9 months on a B2B SaaS. We wanted to start our own startup. It turned out it was a pretty challenging target group, and we decided to pause this project for now. But I'm very grateful for it. We have a very cool team, very excited, and I'm sure we will start in future something again, or work together in future on some projects. However, I decided now to first focus on acquiring more skills, particularly in B2B SaaS sales. So B2B, software as a service / software sales. How do I sell software to other companies? And I took on a SDR role, a sales development representative role in a Swiss B2B SaaS startup, because one of my goals is to become a B2B SaaS sales master. So I really, really know how to sell software. And now circling back to my post, I decided to work in a startup where maybe the salary is not as high as it is if I would go the corporate, if I would do corporate jobs. Obviously, if you work in an established company, you perhaps will earn more. Or if I would do strategy consulting and work in one of the top strategy consultants in the world, you obviously earn more money. However, and I'm not saying you are learning there not a lot of stuff, but I think the cool thing in a small startup, which I will start in June, you need to build everything from scratch. So you learn things firsthand. How to find a repeatable sales process, how to establish that. That's a pretty hard challenge to master. And I'm there from very early on. And I'm starting there as a SDR, as I said. So I simply generate leads. I make people interested in the stuff we sell, and with the overarching goal to book a demo with us. So I try to get them to book a demo with us. And we'll do a lot of cold calls, maybe cold emails, maybe getting intros and trying to book meetings for our account executive, who then will close them perhaps. And I think it's just a great opportunity because, yeah, in that startup, you don't have all the established processes. You don't have all the IT systems, and many things are not figured out yet. But it's a young company. But you can learn so much. And that's what I want to do right now in my 20s. Again, if I want to optimize for salary, I would have gone in a different path. But I do this, and I think that's exactly the right thing. First, because I enjoy it very much. I'm a little bit an unconventional guy, so I think startups better suits my personality. And secondly, yeah, I want to learn a lot, and I want to become very good in software sales right now. At least this is right now my goal. It might change in the future, and I will let you know if things change, because hopefully we change. But I think that's something I want to work right now. And if there's some changes, I will perhaps let you know. Maybe not. We will see. All this to say that in your 20s, we want to learn, not earn. Next one. That's a quote by Leila Hormozi, the CEO of Acquisition.com and wife of Alex Hormozi, the entrepreneur. She said in a podcast, people that have elite talent want to work for people with elite character. So another part of the reason why I started in this B2B SaaS startup is I spent with one of the co-founders 2 weeks in the Dominican Republic. We had like a workation we did together. We were 3 people, and I saw firsthand how he's working and how ambitious he is. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. Now I saw firsthand that he has a pretty elite way of running his startup, and I'm looking exactly for that. And yeah, that was just an example how I thought that applied in my life, or how this was relevant in my life. And there are some other examples, like for instance, Elon Musk. I think people that are A players really love Elon Musk or working for Elon Musk, because you get pushed, you get supported. If you want to work hard, learn, get better, that's the place to be. However, if you're a B or C player, someone who maybe is not that into work, and fair enough, no judgment, that's just another option what you can do. They will not like that place, you know. But if we are A players, high achievers, we want to achieve big things, working for people who have a similar vision or think even bigger, that's the right pathway, I think. Like, people who have the highest standards, work for them because you can learn a lot. And that is part of the reason why now I decided to work for that startup, because I think there are some great people that know way more than I do. And yeah, I think, yeah, long story short, just a interesting thing to have in our mind when working for people. We want to work for people that we, to a certain degree, admire or we respect, and we think, hey, yeah, I also want to live a similar life. And that's also quite an interesting framework for taking advice on, from which people we want to take advice on. I would argue it's the people who live the life we want to live in the end, or the life we want to live. Because they are there where we are not right now, but in future want to be. And people who are not that, who are in a different place, you can listen to them, but maybe it's not the most, reliable advice then. Next quote, again a Chris Williamson quote from this podcast episode I mentioned before. I think people use sort of complex language and fluency as a proxy for truthfulness. That's an interesting one. So, and I absorbed it quite a lot in the past, especially an example at university. I had a group project, and there was a very smart guy. He's very smart, fast thinking, hardworking. So he was high intelligence. He has high work ethic, or working hard, good work ethic. But one thing he lacked, and that was integrity. And that's kind of dangerous. Because Warren Buffett has this framework. He's looking, when investing in companies, that people have 3 traits in common, or the people he's investing in. First is they are hardworking, they're pretty smart, and they have high levels of integrity. Because if you just have hardworking and smart, you have smart people working against you, so they are not really loyal and have high levels of integrity towards you. You don't want that, obviously. And if people sound smart, they're not and smart and use complex language. That's cool. But what Chris Williamson said, it's they use that as a proxy for, or I think people use sort of complex language and fluency as a proxy for truthfulness. Yeah, like people think if somebody speaks smart, that's a truthful person, but it's not always like that. And I just found that a good reminder to myself that just because someone is sounding smart, they're not necessarily a high integrity, truthful person. Kind of obvious, but I thought sharing that with you. Or it's worth sharing that with you. Next one. This is a repost, original post by Alex Ramosi. He said, like, if your business isn't making 100,000 a month, follow these 2 steps. Grab a kitchen timer and turn it to 4 hours. First. And second, advertise until the timer is up. You can do warm outbound, cold outbound, content, or paid ads. Don't do all of them. Just pick one until you get to 100K a month. I would start with outbound or content because they are the cheapest to get started, aka free. When the 4-hour timer is up and the day is done, do it again tomorrow. So, why I like this post is this is exactly, I use this pretty similar approach when, for instance, running my coaching business, or in general when working at university. Like the first hours, I was just like trying to get customers. I was posting my daily content pieces on Instagram, and also I was doing a lot of messenger conversation. And that's exactly what helped me then to get my first clients. I remember in the first month of running my coaching business back in 2022, I had my first 3 clients and I made 5.5-ish in revenue, Swiss francs. Not bad. It was not all cash upfront. It was like some of them were on a payment plan. That was 5.5K, and I thought, like, I've never done that before. I just put in the work and did the outreaches and had the sales calls, and that was cool. And I think that's, again, I said in a previous episode, it's really cool. Like, you don't need to be that smart. You just need to put in the work, and that's cool. And especially if you do that as the first thing in the morning, then you have the most uncomfortable thing already out of your way, and increase the likelihood to get customers on board. Now, a similar approach of 4 hours just doing one thing at a time, I did that in so many different projects. Like at university, the same thing, like working on a very big project, the first 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours sometimes. And you get so much done. And that leads me to the last post of today, which is a post by a repost by which I reposted. Mario Neves is the guy who wrote that. Testosterone is what keeps men alive, but in the last 50 years, levels have dropped by 30 to 50%. That's why I found 8 foods proven by science to boost it naturally. The first one is ginger. That's something I prepare every single day. Tea that contains ginger, lemon peel, mountain tea, and let me quickly look that up. And nettle tea. Yeah, right. And that's like a super, like, at least to me, immune system booster. But ginger, a great way. Like, for inflammation and stuff like that. At least I feel great. What else he mentioned? So ginger, and then some. Actually, I don't want to discuss each of those. I just want to discuss three or maybe 4, because I practice that almost every single day. Which is lemons. I squeeze an entire lemon, an organic lemon, into a glass. Like I cut them in half, and I squeeze one side with one hand and the other with the left hand, because that strengthens my grip strength, which is a good indicator as you're getting older, a good indicator for your health. Then ginger tea, like fresh ginger. Then garlic. I eat sometimes with eggs, for instance, and onions. Yeah, now forgot that word. Long episode. Onions as well. So a great way. So some really superfoods which I'm consuming on a lot of days, which make me feel pretty good. Obviously there are some other foods which I really enjoy. Eggs, chicken, broccoli, stuff like that. All the good healthy stuff, non-processed food. And like that I'm feeling pretty well. And many benefits going along with that. Yeah. All right. All this to say that superfoods can have, I think, a great impact. At least they had on my life a great impact. All right. Long story short, thanks so much for listening to today's episode. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.